from a galaxy far, far away.
And a bookshelf straight out of the 90s.
From Thrawn to Dantooine
And everything in between. This is Legends Look Back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legends Look Back, proudly part of the Utini Podcast Network. This is a Star Wars books podcast for people who preface their video game conversations with "back in my day," where we celebrate our rich EU history as well as dive into lesser-known Star Wars classics. I'm your host, Jared Mays, and it's been a while. I know. All right, listen. Emily has just moved across the pond to Ireland. Is that how you say it? Ireland. I'm sorry to all of our Irish listeners. Yeah, Emily's living out of shoeboxes and I suppose like other boxes right now, and we're going to let her settle in a bit before we get her back on the show, but she will be back. Don't worry. Rick, on the other hand, our producer, is, as I like to describe it, up to his neck in teenagers because of his profession. He's a youth minister. It's not by choice. It's by calling. Anyway, Rick, unable to join us today, but you know who I do have? The wonderful, the legendary Freddie C.
Hello, everyone. Oh, man. It's been a long time since I've got on the mic, I think. It's been a few months already. It feels like a year. But I think it's only been...
late May.
Yeah, it's only been a few months. Rick and Emily, if you're listening, we miss you. Can't wait to have you back. This is our little bonus episode. I feel like Jared did this because of the amount of times I've talked about Star Wars Galaxies on the air. We had a game.
Our buddy Jacob saw this tweet by our guest who we're about to introduce in just a moment, and within seconds of this tweet thread beginning to make its way onto the internet, Jacob tagged me and said, "You've got to book this. You've got to do this for Freddie." Because, of course, we've had, I don't know if it's a drinking game, if we want to advocate that or not, as much as it's a
toothpick holder
kind of
game.
Yeah, that's right. A kind of an inside joke that every time Freddie mentions Star Wars Galaxies, we ring a bell, an imaginary bell, because, you know, we don't edit that in or anything. But that is, of course, today we are joined by a very special guest. You might know him from Star Wars Archives, episodes 51 and 57. That is none other than Chris Kempshall himself. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this since pretty much I stopped playing Star Wars Galaxies. An opportunity to talk about Star Wars Galaxies with, you know, a group of people who aren't going to go, "We don't care about this, Chris. Please leave us alone. This is a party. What do you want from us?"
No, that's exactly our cup of tea. Tea just because you are British. We specialize in what everyone else might deem irrelevant and outdated. That's our niche.
Well, as a historian, I'm on board.
Okay, good. Speaking of being a historian, tell the good folks out there how, other than a couple of stellar appearances on our sister show, the Star Wars Archives, how might our listeners be familiar with you in the Star Wars world?
So in kind of like official terms, I was one of the co-authors on the DK book Star Wars Battles That Changed the Galaxy with Amy Radcliffe and Cole Horton and Jason Fry, which was just the most amazing thing in my life that's possibly ever happened. And it's something that I've been wanting to do since playing Star Wars Galaxies, to write something in the Star Wars universe. And in kind of non-official terms, I also wrote an academic history book about Star Wars called The History and Politics of Star Wars, Death Stars and Democracy, which examines all of the ways that kind of the Star Wars franchise, not just the films, you know, the books, the comics, the computer games, reuse real-world events and real-world history and real-world politics, and, you know, what is it that Star Wars tries to tell us when it does something, I think is probably the best way of framing that.
And that book has really caused a stir. It's in a good way. It's really gotten, really generated a lot of conversation. I don't know if there's been a more recommended book in the behind-the-scenes Utini Slack chat. Whenever somebody's like, "I'm looking for something Star Wars but different," you know, something to really kind of break up the monotony of just always reading another Star Wars fiction book after another. What's something that, you know, is definitely up my alley? You know, folks who might be into history or real world events, and this one just gets recommended all the time. And so
you're the ones driving my sales.
Absolutely, yeah. We take all the credit, none of the blame. That's what.
Yeah, keep going like this. Eventually, the royalties will enable me to buy another book.
That's right. That's awesome. Well, I'm looking around my bookshelves. The classic podcast move of not talking to the microphone and instead looking around the room like an idiot, trying to see where exactly my copy of Battles That Change the Galaxy. I know that's around here somewhere, but as we were saying pre-show, my reference bookshelves are all disorganized and out of sorts. Any of our listeners, if you've got tips on how to organize your reference books, we would love to hear it. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. If you want to hear Chris talk about those books, hop on over to those episodes of Star Wars Archives, episodes 51, 57, stellar interviews. But today, we're going to go back in the past because, after all, Freddie, did you know this? I just learned this right before the show. It's the 20th anniversary of Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah. We all made a big stink of it, of course. 20 years, couldn't believe it. First of all, couldn't believe I was playing it for that long. And the fact that I'm still playing it, the longest game I've ever played. But, congratulations to Star Wars Galaxies and the community that is still really active.
Yeah.
I mean, there's folks that are playing every day still. Some of the folks that I see are, from one server are onto another server and still playing on Twitch. You can find them.
Oh.
So there's a dedicated fan base out there, and I'm glad because I have a place to go to after this interview.
That's right. That's awesome. Well, I'm very excited to talk about this. We were just saying before the show, it's also the 20th anniversary of Knights of the Old Republic.
Ooh.
And so, Freddie, we need to be planning what our big celebratory shindig is going to be for that. I'd like to get Corey, Dr. and CEO Corey Helton, on the show to talk about his love for Ithorians and how they talk out of both sides of their face at the same time. See if we can edit Corey to speak in Ithorian for an hour on the podcast. Patreon stretch goal. We'll see. But tonight we're going to be talking about Star Wars Galaxies. So, Chris, tell us first and foremost, how did you get into the game?
I had never played an online game before. One of the benefits, one of the burdens of growing up during kind of the 1990s and the like. So I'm going to be 40 this year. So go back in time 20 years, is that the internet was pretty garbage at times for dial-up stuff a lot for back then. God, I love that noise. It's like it's the soundtrack of my childhood.
Yes.
And I'd never played an online game before. I had a very rough concept that they existed, and then somewhere I saw that this Star Wars online game was coming out, and I'd been playing Jedi Knight, the various kind of Dark Forces, all sorts of Star Wars games that are around. And a little nervous about going online and playing an online game. I mean, I didn't even have a headset. Couldn't do voice chat or anything like that. The dial-up wouldn't allow for it. But the idea for it had such a good hook.
Right.
In simplest terms, come and play in the Star Wars galaxy. Mm-hmm. Come and live in the Star Wars galaxy. And I had started reading the Expanded Universe Old Legends books probably around 1997-ish, when my first book was Spectre of the Past by Timothy Zahn. I bought it in a Virgin Megastore in downtown Disney in Florida.
That's a long one to start with.
Yeah, well, it was just like, I like Star Wars, here's a book.
Sure.
And then I read that, and then started going backwards in time. So I filled all my head with all of this expanded universe lore, and now I had the opportunity to go and live in it. But the game didn't come out in England until a reasonable time after it was launched in the US, and most of the servers were US servers. So I got like a friend of the family to buy me a copy of Galaxies in America and bring it over on the plane.
Oh, nice. That's
so
commitment.
I could get loaded up and play, and I ended up playing on a West Coast server, which was a terrible idea at times.
I played on an East Coast server, so that didn't make sense either. I'm on the West.
Oh, there we go. But yeah, it just had the perfect hook of just, do you want to come and live in the Star Wars galaxy? And at that time, I was spending all of my time when I wasn't at secondary school or kind of high school for American audiences, reading Star Wars books. In my head, I was already living in the Star Wars galaxies. Why wouldn't I actually want to sit down at a computer and do that?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Chris, you brought up a great point, which was, let's take ourselves back into that time. The internet was not as fleshed out, I would say, as it is now.
Yeah.
There was no real Reddit at the time where everyone could go and see the newest games coming up, right? No central location for news. I found out about Star Wars Galaxies from the newspaper. They interviewed some
an
guy.
actual physical newspaper?
Yes. So they interviewed some guy.
Get your fingers dirty? That's crazy, Freddie.
I'm just 5 years younger than you, Chris. So I understand the era at that time. It was different. And how do I describe this? So first of all, saw it in the newspaper, and it said, I'll never forget, why wouldn't you want to live in Naboo? And I was like, oh man, I know what I'm doing this summer. Just told my parents. Thankfully, yeah, I told my parents, I was like, can we buy? They at that age, I was already the Star Wars fan that I am now, and of course we're gonna buy that for you. It's a game. We know where you're at. You're not gonna be out and about. And so they bought it for me, and I'll never forget that summer being like, I spent my time on Tatooine, Naboo, Dathomir, looking at Night Sisters and hanging out with people wearing Mandalorian armor. That was my summer, and I'll never forget how awesome it was to be just ingrained in that world. And of course, you have the books. And when you read the books and they tie certain things to Star Wars Galaxies, right? You do like the Rebel theme park, and then Corran Horn is right there, and you're like, hey, that's Corran Horn.
Eugenie mascot, friend of the show, Corran Horn.
Yeah. So, Chris, it was, how could you not want to live in the Star Wars universe? And then after that, how could you not want to just read more about it? It was an addiction, that's for sure.
I've got a couple follow-up
questions.
And
I spent like 2 years on the. I spent like 2 years on the forums in the lead up to the game coming out. People were getting increasingly hyped about a game that didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Sure, Freddie. I was just going to ask you, what did you mean when you said looking at Night Sisters? Do we need to probe deeper into what exactly you meant by that one?
The fact that you could see Night Sisters just sitting right in front of you. They are scantily clad. That is
because you'd
true.
read about them in the book, right? The Courtship of Princess Leia.
Yeah, you read about them and then you see them and you're like, oh my goodness, now I have a visual in my head of a Night Sister. That's the thing. You go to the planets, you learn about the planets, you learn about the species on those planets, the plants on those planets. It's more than just doing some missions. And speak about missions, there's really no set goal. It's kind of your world. You do what you want.
Yeah.
Some people just are in the cantina 24 hours a day, right? That's
having a great time.
And they're having a great time, and that's their Star Wars Galaxies.
How does that even pay off as a video game? All right, this from the perspective of someone who has never played Star Wars Galaxies. Freddie, my only exposure to the game is watching you play on a previous episode of Legends Look Back from a couple years ago. If you're going to go to a cantina in a video game, you can't have a drink.
You can.
What do you do? What do you do?
Drunk.
Play Pazak? That's KOTOR, right?
So
they had a card game that they introduced eventually.
They did, yeah. They had a trading card game that came out eventually, but there were casinos in game, that you could go to, and they were like slot machines, and people would be there while they're listening to their music. Right, there'd be a band sitting there, having all sorts of instruments, doing band flourishes and.
Oh, so it's mostly for the
dancers
vibes.
Would be there.
I see what you're saying.
It is, but at the same time, as you listen to the entertainers, they can buff you for whatever thing they need, right? So like, you can give a trade, or say like you're an engineer, right? You make droids. You can get a buff for getting better resources or whatever it is. If you're a fighting character, I was a bounty hunter, so often critical, crit. I want high crit, more health. Something to make me kind of tanky and a little bit of DPS, stuff like that. That's where you go. You listen to the entertainer, watch them and listen to them, and it was an interaction. Hey, what kind of buff would you like? Oh, I'm looking for this, and it was necessary. And you would tip them, like however much money you had for the buff, and that's how they made money.
Sorry about the mess. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, with some of the early stuff, you couldn't put your armor on if you didn't have your health, your action, and your mind buffed up to enough of a level that you could actually wear the stuff. So they were the entertainers were absolutely integral.
That was the thing about the game. You need folks to play the game because it's an economy. There's people making goods, selling goods, trading goods.
Yeah.
You need people to go get resources. If like you go to the Death Watch bunker, you're gonna need a few people with you to to mine some of the resources in that bunker because they're
So you
they're
can't
not
just
easy.
roll through. You can't just roll through in single player mode.
No,
No.
no, absolutely not. You see the Gorax, you better run.
The Gorax, I know about those from the Ruins of Dantooine, Freddie. I know about
Yeah.
those.
And they're beasts. I mean, they're.
Yeah, they were huge.
I'm not even sure
The
how many meters
underrated
they are.
Legends gem, Star Wars Galaxies, the Ruins of Dantooine. I quite liked it. Controversial take here on the show. Well, Freddie, you mentioned you were a bounty hunter. Chris, what about you? What was your class? I'm seeing here on the Wook, shout out to the Wook, that you could choose, a basic, character progression to go through, which was pilot. I've lost them. Jedi. What are they? Help me out, guys.
Yeah, there's different.
Well, that sounds very new game experience.
Yeah. So
Routes. There were a lot more careers and pathways in ye olde Star Wars.
And that's the
Galaxy.
better
Yeah,
one.
smuggler, commando, spy. Here's some officer, medic, entertainer, and trader.
And you could mix and match.
yes,
Oh,
you can
okay.
So
hybrid position.
I started off as a commando, and I dabbled a little bit. I had a bit of officer, and I had a little bit of sniper as well.
Okay, I can see those going together.
Which were useful because officers could give little buffs to kind of your squad mates and
Okay.
the like. And commando was fun to just run around with a flamethrower as an imperial officer. And again, it was very kind of slightly rock paper scissors of how you put it together, but. There were periods in the game when you'd always have people who were chasing the meta, chasing the best possible combination. So Terras Kazi
That was me.
as hand-to-hand fighters. Yeah, I had a little bit of that because you could knock people down, and then when they're knocked on the floor, you say I'm on fire. What's not to like?
Freddie's our real life Terraskasi master. Rumor has it.
But the good kind, not the masters of Terras Kazi computer.
Oh
game,
gosh,
Which,
that's different.
That's a great game. I mean, from a certain point of view, of course.
Yeah. And so there were, I think, one thing with Star Wars Galaxies, there were multiple updates, right? There was like a combat update, then there was like new game enhancement, which changed the game, and
Yeah,
inside the
fundamentally.
game, you had a lot of petitions. People were trying to crash the servers before they could update, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
They would bring out their destroyed vehicles, and it would lag everybody, and they were all doing it just on and off. Save the game, save Star Wars Galaxies. And honestly, a lot of those enhancements, it changed Star Wars Galaxies, I would say, in terms of like what you would do and how the people were, right? It was different. Back in what would you call it? Like pre-NGE, I guess, pre-NGE, where you had like Pistolier, rifleman, and you would combine all of these
Carabiner and the like.
Carabiner, and you combine all of these, in certain like if you wanted an elite profession, right, like bounty hunter, you had to do Carabiner, I forget what else you'd have to do, rifleman, master those, and then you'd have to master like a couple others on the commando side, and then you can find like a bounty hunter trainer, and then you could become a bounty hunter. It wasn't like right off the bat you were a bounty hunter.
Oh, that's cool. So you
Yeah,
had to,
so
you
it
had
was-
to train.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
had to find your career, right? What did you want to do in this game? It was really up to you. It was completely open world. You could technically never do any missions.
So
if
it wasn't
you didn't
just
want to.
Jedi Knight. Do the 10 Jedi Knight missions.
No, and
That's
the
kind of
thing.
how it
No,
is
no.
in
To
the
become a
Old
Jedi,
Republic.
you had to find it, right? It wasn't like something you
Yeah.
could unlock just like through a tree. Some people had to do every single profession, get every single exploration badge and every single quest, and then they would type in this thing, and it was like your sense of the Force is stronger, and then you would lead into the path of the Jedi. But some people never unlocked it.
That's really cool. And I thought it took a lot to become a Jedi in Knights of the Old Republic, where you don't get your lightsaber till Dantooine, which is maddening. You want to pull your hair
yeah.
out. What were you going to say, Chris?
Yeah,
I was going that seeing a Jedi in game pre-NGE was
rare.
incredibly rare.
Oh, kind of a white whale.
And quite exciting
Yes,
because it's like, oh my god, it's you're here.
Yeah.
But for a while, Jedi had permadeath.
yes, I
That if they
died.
died 2 or 3 times,
I had
turn into a blue glowy.
Yep.
No,
You
Freddie, you're a Force ghost out there somewhere, man?
Yeah,
No.
I had a Force ghost, and only Jedi can see you, right? Other Jedi can see you, and so you'd have to basically start a new character because you can't really do anything useful now. But yeah, you die, and that was it. You would, I think it was like, you were right. It's like two or three deaths as a Jedi, and you were gone.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, speaking of choosing your career here, I'm looking at the different character classes, and this one is killing me. And I cannot believe that this exists in the game. If there was ever a more custom-built profession for our buddy Trevor over on the Star Wars Archives, one of the sub-professions was Chronicler, which allowed building holocrons with player-created quests, placing props, objectives, and narration. Yeah. That's hilarious. So Chris, did you have one of these sub-professions that you did?
I'm trying to remember. I don't, because the Chronicler came. That's post NGE.
Right. Looks like it is.
There was an element of Sony were both very smart about it, and also you could see that they were a little lax about it as well, in that they realised that the players were going to be the ones who populated this world with content.
Yeah.
You know, SOE would send out quests and, you know, expansions and bits and pieces like that, but the players took it upon ourselves, to create entertainment. And the chroniclers and the like were able to create, you know, huge, great big stories and events and stuff like that.
Even role-playing games.
Again,
like you could roll dice in game and see the value. Everyone could see the value. So you could play like a role-playing Dungeons and Dragons game, you know, in Star Wars with this chronicler.
In Star Wars Galaxies. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. It was big.
Before Zoom even existed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, especially once the internet sped up a little bit and we got high speed. You could really take this to the next level. You could punch it, Chewie, and take this thing to a whole new level. Well, you mentioned that players kind of created their own content. Obviously, game directors, developers, they could add their own, you know, missions and quests and that sort of thing. But, you know, one of the things you mentioned here online is that there were these NPC cities that were busy, thriving places, and that there were then things created by the characters, you know, by the player base, from huge battles to races to parties. Talk to me about what that is. What was it like to create your own in-game experiences separate and apart from what the game developers were telling you to do?
It was great. So obviously you had like the major NPC cities. There'd generally be about 5 or so on each planet. So there'd be like Theed on Naboo or Mos Eisley on Tatooine. But out in the wild, out in the wilderness, you could build houses and people would live in their houses, and eventually they'd build kind of de facto cities before player cities were introduced. And eventually then the developers introduced like a cap of 10 or 20 player-controlled cities on every planet.
Okay.
And they could be big, sprawling fortresses or kind of
metropolises,
metropolises and the like. And at times, the players would, through the forums, through the in-game chat, basically say, okay, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will attack this player city.
The bases.
Yeah, and you place down rebel bases or imperial bases that had a timer that they could be blown up for 2 or 3 hours every day, and that would be a slightly randomized
hundreds of people
timer.
Hundreds of people surrounding this.
Hundreds of people.
And of course, you would have spies or somebody that can camouflage from the other side, right? PvP. So when someone queued up as PvP, they'd all gang up on you and kill you. And then it would just become a huge war. Everyone would start to PvP and lag everywhere.
And semi regularly on Naboo. So I was on the Naritas server again, which I said was a West Coast server. There would be pretty regular battles of Naboo, which would take place. The Imperials would be at the Emperor's Retreat, and the Rebels would be at Marina, and you'd both march out and you'd fight in the No Man's Land, and whoever pushed back far enough to become obvious that they'd won would win this month's Battle of Naboo. We'll see you all in 4 weeks' time. And it was just great.
Wow.
And you know, one thing that Chris hasn't mentioned yet is how large these maps are in real life. If you take a speeder in Naboo from one corner to the other, you're probably sitting there, what, Chris, for like 20 minutes?
20 minutes, half an hour.
In
like
real
that,
life.
to get there.
In real life. So, you know, these maps were
not
only
really?
just...
Okay.
Yeah, they were massive maps. And, you know, let's just use, I don't know, let's use World of Warcraft as an example. Say you buy a house in World of Warcraft. likely everybody's kind of going into the same portal, right? The same kind of house. And it transports you into your instance of your house. But Star Wars Galaxies, if you walked into somebody's house, it was in real time. You could see them in there and say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?"
Right,
Oh,
I've seen you do
I'm
some
just,
of that.
Yeah,
Right.
and you can walk into your buddy's house, check it out, and that was the other thing. There were people that would decorate the heck out of their houses.
I decorated mine.
yeah, me too.
Freddie, I bet you had the most expensive in-game artwork there ever was.
Oh my goodness! Any of them that you could think of, I had them.
Freddie, like Grand Admiral Thrawn, is our resident art connoisseur.
Yeah. So when you start from one end to the other end of the map and you meet in the middle, it's literally the middle of nowhere. You could probably look and it would take you 30 minutes to get to the nearest city, and maybe 15 minutes to get to the nearest shuttle port. And even if you get to the shuttle port, you might be there for 5 minutes waiting for the shuttle to get back.
Yeah. And there was a time that there weren't speeders.
You had to run everywhere. I forgot about that.
So
that took ages.
Not only is it a game you had to access in the olden days with dial-up internet, but there was
You had to
also no
walk.
fast travel. You had to just walk where you wanted to go. That's fantastic. That's so old school.
Immersive.
Eventually, they shortened the timer on the shuttles to about a minute, and I hugely regretted that because there was standing there for 10 minutes would be the maximum amount of time that you would wait. You just chat to people for 10 minutes, waiting for a shuttle. Where are you going? What have you been up to? Stuff like that. It was sociable.
Yeah, it was very sociable, and I feel like we all liked Star Wars. So, it was difficult to really describe, but people got into this world. This was their world.
Yeah.
And I have no idea. I've never seen any game like that with that level of dedication of like, this is my world, this is our world. But, if you wanted to build a city, and a lot of people did, there were city planners literally putting like small houses down this corridor, large houses down this corridor. You had like a central area with a marketplace. Like those were the cities, and this is how invested people got. And I'd love to see something similar. I don't think I've seen anything quite the same.
No.
Well, speaking of the fact that you haven't seen anything quite the same, obviously the game itself has been phased out and replaced with another massive multimedia online experience, Star Wars The Old Republic, which is still going. For how much longer? I don't know. I feel like that one's also got a ticking time clock. But it was in 2011 that the original server shut down here with Star Wars Galaxies. Everybody pour one out for Star Wars Galaxies. However, fans have kept it alive via emulators. That's, Freddie, where you still play to this day. Nevertheless, obviously it has had a tremendous impact on so many people. And Chris, you have gone on to become, a Star Wars creator, if you will.
How cool.
What was it about the game that inspired you to become a creator? You mentioned that your books wouldn't have been written had it not been for this game. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
So, firstly, again, Star Wars Galaxies was an enjoyable Star Wars experience. And, when I started playing it, I was in college, but certainly during the time that I was reading Star Wars novels at secondary school, do I want to tell people in my class at secondary school that I'm going to go home and read a Star Wars novel? Do I want to spin the wheel about how that's going to be received?
Yeah, we've all been there.
So, we've all been there. So being around other people who were enthusiastic about Star Wars, I hadn't been to a Star Wars celebration or a convention. I didn't really know that such things existed. And I'm not even sure they did fully exist. Maybe around that time. So firstly, that was very affirming. And I found a lot of like-minded people, and what it did was it sparked a creative itch in me. So I started writing fan fiction set on our server in Star Wars Galaxies with characters that people would recognize, like some of the famous actual Star Wars characters will pop up from time to time, but it was set around the Imperial Guild that I was leading on Naboo, and those started off as like a couple of chapters, not very long, maybe a few hundred words, a few thousand words, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the time I wrote my last one, it was like a 60,000 word long story arc set on our server around Star Wars Galaxies. We're bringing in like real events from Star Wars Galaxies, and the wider Star Wars expanded universe lore and the like. So what it meant was that I was gobbling up Star Wars books even faster than I had been previously, because I wanted more content, I wanted more knowledge, I wanted more Star Wars. I was finding an audience in Star Wars Galaxies on the forums who were enjoying this stuff and getting a kick out of it. And I stopped playing when probably when I was finished my MA, which was 2006. I was probably still playing in 2006, 2007, but by the time I started my PhD, which was 2008, I probably had largely kind of drifted away from the game. I didn't have the time because I wasn't.
You don't
I wasn't
have time
that
for
age
anything
anymore.
when you're working on a PhD.
Yeah, and I couldn't afford to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning anymore. Fighting over the ruins of a rebel base. But what it gave me was like a thorough education in Star Wars content and Star Wars lore and Star Wars Legends, expanded universe, whatever it is that we want to call it. That when it came time for me to write I decided I wanted to write this history book, this academic history book on it. It was the easiest writing experience or certainly research experience of my life, because I've said to people before, normally it would be like, I'm writing a book about, I don't know, the First World War or something like that. Oh God, I need a thing. I'm going to have to go to the archive. I'm going to have to find the stuff, and I'm going to be there all day. And God, this is annoying. Oh, I need a Star Wars book. Well, guess I'll just walk upstairs then, because they're all on a bookshelf. I still had all of this stuff, and I absolutely mined the Star Wars Galaxy strategy guide for stuff, because there was loads of stuff in there about what it meant to be in the Rebel Alliance, or what it meant to be in the Empire.
Interesting.
Because it's an introduction for players. And yeah, I wouldn't have written that academic history book if I hadn't been reading all those Star Wars books, and I wouldn't have been reading all those Star Wars books if I wasn't playing Star Wars Galaxies.
Wow.
And if I hadn't written or wasn't writing that Star Wars history book, I wouldn't have been asked by DK.
Wow.
To come and write.
Chris, that's
amazing.
amazing.
The Galaxy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know
and
what?
Hopefully more on the way. We'll see.
I guarantee.
Yeah.
I guarantee I've read some of your stories. I don't doubt it. I was on the forums nonstop. I straddled Bloodfin. I was on a few other servers.
I have no idea what you're saying right now, Freddie.
They're all servers.
Yeah.
And Bloodfin was like one of the ones that lasted the longest, I think, when they all merged.
Narrator's got closed down.
Yeah.
They closed this down, and that still breaks my heart.
Yeah. That was one of the times. So, Jared, there was a time when resources, you could tell, were getting a little slim at SOE for Star Wars Galaxies. And they had to combine servers, and mind you, these servers are like home, right?
Sure,
when you're like Bloodfin, like I'm Bloodfin, like that's my server. That's where I lived. That was my universe.
You'd have factions against other servers about whose server was the coolest.
Well, there was a time when they combined the servers because they just didn't have the resources, probably allocating them to other games. So they combined servers, and then you've got a mix of people from like Bloodfin and I'm trying to think of some of the names right now. I can't.
Like Ahazi or something like
exactly. Ahazi. Were they named after ships?
Yeah, they were all named after. There were a lot of them named after different ships.
Yeah, different
so
ships.
Neritus was named after a rebel ship. I'm pretty sure they were all named after ships.
Yeah. So Jared, it was like a combining of the community from. I want to say during those eras, you started seeing a lot of people fall off, right? Like, oh, this isn't my game anymore. And I did too around that time, because I was getting older. I was deep in engineering work and couldn't really get to it, just like you, Chris.
Yeah, it says it was 2009 here when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And I just remember getting on and logging in and then seeing disconnected from Star Wars Galaxies, and I was like, oh, that's it. It's gone.
Yeah.
But the community is still strong. The ones who decided, like, this game is for me. This is the game I'm playing. It's still strong. And you still have the people that are on different emulators, right? They're not...
Yeah.
There's Legends, there's Restoration. I can't think of a lot of the other ones, but there's a couple others. And they all take different elements of what they liked about Star Wars Galaxies.
Oh, sure.
And so if you want to play an NGE version, you can go find it. If you want to play the one that Chris and I like the most, you can find it.
Yeah, I need to find maybe just after the combat upgrade, because I didn't mind the combat upgrade.
So,
I thought that actually helped a lot.
Restoration Star Wars has been one of the ones that I've liked the most. I feel like they've tried to keep a lot of the old kind of the way we used to like it, but mixed it with like the stuff that, hey, there was actually some stuff in NG that was really nice, like the auto run and some other some other cool little things. Even just the navigation of the keyboard is different. But Yeah, Jared. Any other questions? I could go on about this forever. So
Let's do like a lightning round, Freddie. Let's go back
Okay.
and forth with questions here. Let's do I don't know 2 or 3 apiece. You're gonna have to come up with some stuff off the fly here. We'll keep it spicy, Freddie.
do it.
And if it's dumb, I'll edit it out. But I'm saying that for myself more than for you. So, all right. So first and foremost, do you have? And we'll ask for both of you here. One core memory of something that happened when you played Star Wars Galaxies, just like that one monster you defeated and you had to team up with other players to face it. Or, honestly, I don't know. I never played the game, so help me out here. Like one core memory, something fun that happened that you'll never forget.
Chris,
Who wants to go first?
Oh, I can go first, Chris. It's up to you if you have it on your head.
I've got
Okay,
it.
go ahead.
I've got it.
Shoot.
Imperial invasion of Tatooine in around 2005. We spent my guild linked up with every other Imperial guild on the server, and we spent months surveying inch by inch Tatooine to find out all the rebel bases, the times they were going to blow up, and we selected a day to gather together on Naboo, and we went to the spaceport and we took off into space. TIE fighters, interceptors, devastators. I saw the Imperial fleet leave Naboo and fly to Tatooine, and 200, 300 Imperials in Stormtrooper armor and the like just stormed the planet and started burning stuff to the ground.
That's got to be exciting.
And then lots of rebels started logging in because they found out what was happening. That first battle lasted for 36 hours.
Wow.
As people logged in and logged out and the like, and it led to like a months-long Tatooine campaign.
Yeah.
Just imagine those rebels being like, "What the heck, guys? What's happening?"
Yeah, like all of our bases are gone, and the Imperial Army just marched
And that's
from
a big
like
deal.
west to east.
That was a big deal in game. If your bases were gone, then like your buffs were gone. You wouldn't get the same benefits, and you really needed to protect those bases.
Yeah, and it feels really weird trying to tell people about it. Like this was a
Big deal.
I know this was important. I was there. I saw this happen. I'd slaved over maps for months and months in the lead up to it, but it was just the most amazing thing.
That was the cool thing, Jared, is if something big happened and you weren't in game, you'd find out and you'd get in game.
But you wouldn't find out on Twitter. You would find out like on these
the
message
forums.
boards.
Forums, yep,
Yeah.
the forums.
So a very slow way to communicate.
So it's so funny, Chris. That leads me into my memory, which is there's a couple of memories. One was actually, you know what? They both lead into each other. I'll never forget how this happened. Restus. You remember Restus?
I remember Restus.
You remember Restus. So Jared, Restus was a town like Theed. It was like Theed, a big city. You had your spaceport. You had all of your trainers. The cities were they had banks to go do your trading. All the bazaar terminals. It was a city,
like your shops, right?
Yeah, it was a city, and the folks ran. I was in Death Watch bunker at this moment. There was a bunch of Imperials, and we're talking maybe upward to 50 to 100 just at the very beginning, occupying Restus. I mean, Restus was Imperial. It was Imperial. And this was kind of like towards the beginning when people started, like Restus became a thing, right? And I was in the Death Watch bunker trying to get my last thing for my helmet. I had everything else but the helmet. So I had like a composite helmet with Mandalorian armor. And it didn't look good.
You get in there, though. You get in there.
Yeah. And I had my jetpack. I was like almost done. And we managed to get the engineer, because you had to bring an engineer who's like the weakest person, right? They don't have any.
He can die.
They don't have any really. They have armor, but they can't really do anything. They can shoot, but they can't do any
leg
specific.
Day.
Yeah. So you have to protect this person, and I was, protecting him, and someone else, our guild was in there. Like, we need to get this last thing, and I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been just like a PLC or something like that. One of the drops that you need one of the materials you need to make the helmet. So anyway, got it. We ran over to our home planet, which was in Theed. It was like, I don't know, maybe if you went north, it was like the first city. It was really close. So we're all heading into Theed, and we get a screaming message in TeamSpeak, because that's what we used at the time, TeamSpeak, screaming, guys, Imperials, they're all over Restus. we're like, oh, okay, let's go take care of the equipment. So I'm in my house. I'm waiting for the engineer to finish my helmet, and I'm like, I cannot wait. I thought it was like 10 people, right? I thought it was just 10 folks, didn't know anything. Got on the forums, I saw a screenshot of everybody that was there, and it was just all the names, hundreds of names, just you could see everybody's name, their profession, and their rank. And it was a lot of Imperials, and we're like, oh,
It's a bona fide invasion.
we're gonna have to go do something about this. And the second I'll never forget, I got onto Restus, landed into Restus, and you could see just all the chaos happening far away, with the rebels and Imperials. Put on my helmet for the first time. I remember I selected it, put it on, ran straight in there with my speed, got nailed, like instantly. It was done by like 6 spies that were right there at the very front.
They're ready for you.
Yeah, and I ended up playing that day. I'll never forget this. I played for 16 hours PvP, just trying to take control. You would see the rebels take control, and then you'd see the Imperials come in with a whole new fresh wave, and you're just like, oh my goodness.
Reinforcements have arrived.
And the fun thing, here's the fun part, is you'd go to Theed, because that's where everybody was buffing, or Restus, somewhere in Restus, like a secret spot, and the Imperials would find where that secret spot is at and kill everybody while they were buffing. Or vice versa. Like spies would kind of try to follow everybody to see where they're going because they're invisible. But yeah, it was like the last piece of equipment I needed, and like the large battle that I'll never forget, just sitting at that computer for hours and then not wanting to get off because it's still going.
Yeah.
And I pretty sure, Chris, it was like one of your battles. It was like a 3-day battle.
Yeah.
Really sounds like the Wild West of the internet.
Yeah.
Well, even just like an extra aspect of the early part of your story, people talking now about, the Mandalorians come out and, you get Death Watch and that in the Mandalorian. Star Wars Galaxies had Death Watch 20 years ago, introduced as a little faction in a little bunker.
Before it was,
Before anywhere else.
Yep.
Wait, before it was in Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Way before Clone Wars.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I really sound like a newbie saying something like that. Before it was in Clone Wars? I thought that... All right. Freddie, you get to ask the next one. So, the memorable experience, what you got?
Yeah.
What's another good one we can ask here? And lightning round, Freddie. Lightning round means we're keeping it quick.
Were you into space combat at all?
Yes.
Yeah. What was your go-to ship? What was your daily space missions, I guess?
So I flew the Imperial Guard, or Royal Imperial Guard, TIE Interceptor, the red one, quite a lot. But because I was a leader of a large Imperial guild, I turned my Decimator into my flagship. So we'd just kind of knock about on that with people flying it for me, and I'd sit in a chair and I'd give orders and like some big dumb Imperial captain. It was great.
Yeah, that. Oh man, I remember when they brought in gunboats too. That brought in a whole new strategic game to the space battles. That was the other thing, Jared. Some battles that would happen on ground, you would see space battles too. Rebel.
Oh, cool.
There might be, resources nice resources to mine, and say like an Imperial comes in and blows up one of maybe someone's ship that's in a PvP area trying to get resources. Then that brings in a clan of people to fight, and then that brings in another clan. Before you know it, there's a space battle.
Really like in the books. You'll have a ground skirmish that turns into a space battle, and then you've got reinforcements that arrive. And that really sounds like, from a game design standpoint, kind of an impressive feat that they would have space combat in addition to all of the rich on-planet gameplay that they had. You showed me just the sheer level of flora and fauna and all the creatures. That's really one of the impressive feats about this game, is how well developed the world building was. But there was also space battles on top of all that. I didn't know.
Yeah. At the very end of the game, when they were shutting it down, they introduced atmospheric flight, which I never got to do. So basically, you could, if you were on a planet, you couldn't fly your TIE fighter around in the planet's atmosphere. You'd go up to space and you'd fight up there. But at the end of the game, they were like, it doesn't matter anymore, we're shutting this thing down. So they would let people fly their TIE fighters around, and you could shoot people on the ground.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Freddie says, it was fun to shoot people on the ground with my TIE fighter. I love that.
It would have fundamentally changed some of the big battles if you could have had air support.
Oh yeah.
In the same atmosphere. It would have been amazing.
Sure.
That would have been interesting to see that, because I feel like it would have. Yeah, man, that would have been. Those would have been big battles. A lot of lag. That's all I think of.
Yeah, well, my
rubber banding.
Dial up.
I'm noticing
noticing
a pattern here, Freddie. The number of times you talked about lag with this game.
Yeah,
it was the olden days.
When you have these big battles, it didn't even matter. I think even if it happened now, you would still have that effect. But it was just this rubber banding. You would run like maybe 20 meters, and then boom, it would throw you right back to where you were at before. And that's just the nature of these. You would just find someone, keep clicking, trying your crits, and then you'd start getting hit by somebody else. You'd run away. You don't know where it's coming from. It felt like real battle. It was confusing.
It was confusing, and it was scary at times. Where people just turned up and like, oh, that's a lot of red names coming over the hill.
Yes.
I like the idea that, sometimes you find yourself in a situation that's like, on a normal day, I couldn't beat this person in hand-to-hand combat. However, there's always the chance that they'll glitch out and I'll win.
And
sometimes you
take
just
advantage
risk
of it.
That's right.
It was battle. It was dirty. If someone was laying on the floor and they hadn't been death blown yet, you'd go run over there and death blow them.
You heard it.
Otherwise they're going to get up.
You heard it here first, folks. Freddie will death blow you if you're laying on the ground and defenseless. All right, hey Freddie, let's do 1 or 2 more questions each. Let's see. What's one mission that you got really sidetracked with at some point in the history of the game? One particular experience or adventure that it just became like a quest for you that you would not give up on. Freddie, you mentioned the quest to get your helmet. You were just determined to finally finish your armor. You wanted to get that helmet made.
Just to remind you had to do the gloves, the wow, what's that part called?
Bracer.
The bracer. Then you'd have to get your shoulder, your other bracer. You had to build every little piece of that. Yeah, it took a long time.
9 pieces for every suit of armor.
Okay. And then now Freddie's trying to build real life armor. Love it. All right, so what's one kind of a mission that you, or a quest of sorts that you had to sidetrack yourself with?
Go on, Freddie. You go first for this one.
Well, the one that I'll never forget when they brought Exarchun in.
You have my attention.
Yeah, so they brought Exarchun in, and it was several rooms of semi-bosses, and you had to go about it the right way. If you did something different, boom, death blow at everybody. And it was like single blow, death blow. And you'd have to go restart, and sometimes you'd be locked out and you couldn't do it again. I think I remember that. It's a little fuzzy.
2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, 2 or 3 hours. So Exarchun, you'd go to his temple and maneuver your way through the temple, fight a couple of people. When you get to Exarchun, you'd have to team up, right? You'd need your medic, you'd need a commando, someone tanky, maybe a Jedi if possible, and some DPS. You'd have to build a strategic group. Otherwise, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it at all if you had too much of something, too much of this. And that was the part, right, is finding folks that needed to go do this and finding people. And, of course, the bigger your guild was, the more resources you had to build your armor.
Sure.
And going into Exarchun's temple, you could get like a fresco of Exarchun as a drop.
Oh, cool.
You can get weapons from him and stuff like that. Those were definitely, I spent a lot of time doing that and then collecting, I think it was like the bracelets and the jewelry.
Exarchun had that drip.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, what about you?
So it wasn't a single quest, it was the Imperial theme park.
Yeah.
For me. So the Emperor has a retreat on Naboo in like the southeast of the country.
It is its own planet.
Yeah. And it would like be a building out in the countryside, and you'd go in and you'd get escalating levels of missions. So you'd start off from like a random captain outside, and then you'd move in and you might get a mission from General Veers. And then you'd get one from Inquisitor Hethrir, because the Inquisition, everybody knows from Rebels,
sure.
and the like was in Star Wars Galaxies in the old
Rebels,
version of
that's
it.
Right.
And then you'd go and get a mission from Thrawn, and then you'd get a mission from Darth Vader, and then you'd get a mission from the Emperor, and it would just escalate in difficulty, and you'd work your way up through the Imperial hierarchy.
Corvette.
And eventually they gave you like very specific Imperial Stormtrooper armor for if you'd done it. And like, but there was also a time when you just got like just some random tat. It's like, yeah, congratulations, have this button. It's like, thanks, Your Highness.
Great.
But at the same time, I got to meet the Emperor
Or
and
the flags, right? The Imperial
flags,
flag. That was cool.
Wait, hold on. An amusement park, a theme park on Naboo with flags, 6 flags over Naboo.
We called it a theme park.
Yeah, it's like a quest hub.
It's a quest hub, and it would probably take you. You could do it in a full day if you had a lot of time, and
a lot of people
to help. Otherwise,
how are the concession stands?
The concession stands.
By the TIE fighter outside.
Yeah. And you would just complete like Chris said, it was like escalating missions, and you would eventually get, for the Rebel theme park, you would start off with some low-level guy and work your way up, and then you get a mission from Leia Organa or Wedge Antilles and
how about Lando?
Corran Horn. Lando could give you a mission. Yeah, you could get a mission from Lando.
Love it.
Yeah, it might be smuggling.
The Rebel one was on Dantooine, and
Yeah.
it was split between Dantooine and Yavin, wasn't it? Because you couldn't, if you were in the Empire, you couldn't walk into the Rebel quest buildings and vice versa.
Sure.
So you could get to the outside and be like, I can see Leia Organa down the corridor, I should go and arrest her, and then you just get pushed back out if you try to walk in.
Run in.
That's right. You shall not pass. I love it. I have seen some of Dantooine. Freddie did give us a tour of Dantooine when we read the book by Veronica Whitney Robinson and Hayden Blackman. We read Ruins of Dantooine. So he took us on a tour behind the waterfall. We got to see all that, which was fun. So I actually knew what you're talking about there. Love it. But what about you? What's your favorite planet you could go to in Star Wars Galaxies? Freddie has said Naboo a lot. He's talked a lot about Theed.
That's where I was always at.
You got a favorite planet? Maybe something from the EU.
I mean, I'm going to have to start off by saying my city was on Naboo, my guild was on Naboo. When I loaded up Star Wars Galaxy Legends after I finished my academic history book, I spent ages crawling back through the internet Wayback Engine to find the old Star Wars forums so I could find out the exact coordinates of my old planet, of my old city. So I could go there and put a house down on it and be like, the Crimson Order lives. So Naboo I liked a lot. I mean, Endor and Dathomir were both cool, creepy planets.
Dathomir.
Super creepy.
I would love to see Dathomir. That sounds cool.
If you were walking in Dathomir and you just walk out there, you're probably going to die, honestly.
Yeah, a Rancor will arrive and eat you.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Again,
That's how I want to go, y'all. That's it. That's absolutely.
But the thing about Dathomir was it only existed in the Courtship of Princess Leia. And again, this is pre-Clone Wars.
Right.
There is no, how important Dathomir and the Night Sisters become in modern Star Wars lore. Loads of that gets filled in the gaps in Star Wars Galaxies.
Oh yeah, Star Wars Galaxies talked about a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing in Clone Wars. I hear folks talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, Night Sisters, blah blah blah." I'm like, do you know where they come from?
That's right.
Do you guys know that obviously because Matt Martin's part of the story group.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's Lucasfilm. He played Star Wars Galaxies on the Naritas server.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Kelly Knox, who's done various books and bits and pieces, she was a community engagement manager or person on Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah, she's a friend of the Living Force. She's part of that crew. Yeah.
That's amazing. There's these little Star Wars Galaxies, little nodes still interacting with Lucasfilm that I find just endlessly pleasing.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love that. All right, so we got Naboo. Both of you in agreement on Naboo there?
That's where I was hanging out.
Also like Dantooine. Shout out to Dantooine. And Dathomir.
Nice. Yeah, Tatooine was not my favorite place. I could tell you that.
No.
It was
Tatooine. Just too much sand, Freddie?
There's a lot of sand, and it's everywhere. It's not just that, but like the dust storms would come in, and sometimes you'd have to just wait it out until the lag would go.
Yeah.
The lag. Everybody, if you're listening, take a drink.
I had a guildmate who always said Tatooine sandstorms. What did she say? Can kill people and kill your computer.
My bones are aching, Annie.
Yeah.
They can kill people what?
They kill people and kill your computer while they're at it too, because it was just
computer.
you would hear the fans.
Because you get dynamic weather and a day-night cycle. It used to rain a lot on Naboo.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, right? It was a dynamic weather. You could be out in Restus, it'd be sunny. Before you know it, it would start to rain, and that would just make everything chaotic, as it should. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's, Chris, going back to it, I can see a lot of folks becoming content creators that have played Star Wars Galaxies because you're just in this world. you're in this world,
Yeah.
and it's almost so easy to describe what you're seeing and what it was like. So
Yeah.
Very
interesting.
immersive. Makes
Yeah,
you feel like
absolutely.
you live there.
Oh yeah, I
That's
feel like I live
fantastic.
there.
That's great. Well, that's kind of how I've been with the new Zelda game this summer. Finally beat it, took a little break from it, and it's like, oh, that's right. There's a real world around me. So
Yeah, but it's less good.
here, as we get ready to wrap up, Freddie, you got one more lightning round question here for us?
Yeah. So, what was your most feared creature, Chris? What was the creature you'd see and you're like, ugh, I need to go the other way?
So, I'm pretty sure it was on Dathomir that it wasn't the Rancors. You used to get big Famba creatures that were like big
Fambas.
four-legged dinosaurs. And
There's
I
always
went
a bigger
to
fish.
Dathomir, yeah. At a point when I really wasn't ready to go to Dathomir, I wasn't high enough level, and I wandered out into the wilderness and got aggroed by a big Famba thing that chased me.
Was it a
on
Maclock?
foot? Because maybe that was it. Yeah, that chased me on foot because there were no speeders, all the way back to the spaceport. And I was just about faster than it, but only very incrementally faster than it. I was never fast enough to get away. But as it followed me into the spaceport, it then aggroed everybody else in the spaceport as well. So it's like, congratulations, everybody. I've dragged this incredibly angry rhino into the spaceport, and it's just going to start killing us all now. So it was that. Whenever I went back to Dathomir, and even when I went back to Dathomir in Star Wars Galaxies Legends, it's like, beware of the wildlife. That it's the wildlife that you don't expect that will haunt you.
Yeah.
The wildlife that you don't expect. Man, that's gonna like rattle around in my nightmares tonight. It's the wildlife that you don't expect that will haunt you. Thank you for that. That's gonna leave an impression. Well, Freddie, what
very
else?
welcome.
What else have we missed here as we get ready to wrap? Anything we've left out?
Yeah, for me it was the spitting rawls. The spitting rawls that just snakes you couldn't get away from. But yeah, what other things? Species. Did you play a certain species? Were you human? I feel like Imperial human.
I was human Imperial. So this is an extra fun thing. It was harder to play as the Empire as non-human races. You would gather XP at a slower rate.
Wow.
Because the Empire discriminates against aliens. So it was harder to be an alien in the Empire. So it was designed to make you human.
Sure. Right.
So you would find occasional Imperial Wookiees and the like, but it took them longer to get to the upper ranks because the Empire was like, nah, yeah, you're a dirty walking carpet. You're
They
gonna
discriminated.
You see
twice the
Trandoshans
XP.
too. A lot of Trandoshans in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they were more willing to play dirty so they could get ahead in the Empire easier than Wookiees. Checks out. Oh, that's great. Well, I'm looking forward to doing some more exploring about all of this myself. And Chris, this has been delightful. As we get ready to wrap here, tell the good folks where they can find you online and how they can support the work that you're doing.
So probably the easiest place to find me online. Well, I'm gonna start off by saying Twitter. We've been talking for an hour. It might not exist anymore.
Right. Huge
but,
caveat with Twitter.
Huge caveat, but Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all at Chris Kempshall. Again, the benefit of being the only Chris Kempshall in existence means that I always get exactly whatever screen name I want for things like that. So yeah, at Chris Kempshall is a good place to find me. I mean, if you want, I can, depending on how you put out the show notes, I can probably give you all a discount code for the History and Politics.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
For like 25% off.
We love discounts.
Yeah, it almost makes books affordable when they're academic ones to start with. So yeah, I can give you a discount code for everybody who's listening who might want to buy a book that does talk in varying levels of detail about Star Wars Galaxies.
Oh yeah.
Excellent.
I'll be
Yeah,
there.
so check the show notes for that, everybody. Wonderful. Well, that does it for this week. Thanks for joining us here for Legends Look Back. Thanks to our incredible patrons for your support. We love making the show. We're glad you're along for the ride. Special thank you to Brian Dooley, Earl Q, Carl Sander, Zach W, Michael Fry, and Raymond Buzinski on our Jedi High Council, and James T, Ashley Ingalls, Colton Fife, and Chris Carrizo on our Alliance High Command for your amazing support. Of course, everybody, we've been on a bit of a break, but we will be back very soon. We've got another bonus episode coming your way within the next week or so, as well as live shows resuming in early to mid-August. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Thank you once again, Chris, for joining us for the episode.
Thank you for having me along. I've been just incredibly excited about talking about Star Wars Galaxies.
Chris, we'll have to stay in touch.
I've been like scared of how wild this was going to turn Freddie. You know, just absolutely turning him loose to talk about Star Wars Galaxies, which normally I have to keep him on a leash with this topic. So this has been delightful. Remember, everybody, to sub to the channel, leave us a review in your podcast platform of choice, and of course, if you like your thoughts around the show, our contact information is in the description below. We're also, for now, on Twitter at Legends Look Back. Remember, everybody, to keep the Utini fan code and be a force for positivity in the fandom. May the Force be with you.
This is a Utini broadcast.